Hello everyone and welcome to the new section of the course. In this section, we're going to explore arrays in detail. In programming, quite often we will need an ordered collection of data where we have a first, second, third element and so on. For example, we need to store a list of something, users, items, elements, etc. There exists a special data structure named array to store ordered collections. Now, let's see how we can declare arrays in our code. First of all, just to mention, we created a new folder called Arrays in Detail. As always, we created an index.html file, a script.js file, and then we right-clicked the index.html file and clicked Open with Live Server. After that, you can open the console in your browser, and that means that our files are connected. With that said, we can start playing with arrays. For example, let's do some months. We're going to say const months, and you know that months need to be an ordered collection of data. Months, January, February, March, and so on. So we declare it as any other variable with a name, and then this is how it works. The syntax is as follows. Opening and closing square bracket. That forms an array. In there, you can have variables of any other data type. For example, we can have 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. But we can also have strings, and that's what we're gonna do in this case. We're gonna say January, and then you separate it with a comma, and the second one is gonna be February. Then we have March, and let's do April. That's fine for now. We have 4 months, and they are stored in this data type called array. Array elements are numbered, starting with a 0. We can get an element by its number in square brackets. So if we do something like this, console log, and then we reference to the months. Let's see what do we get. As you can see, we get an array, and then in that array, we have 4 different elements. January, February, March, and April. You can see how we have an array right there. What if we do a type of operator that we learned on the months array? You can see it's an object. So we have primitive data types like strings, numbers, null, undefined, and so on, but everything else is a complex data type of object. So arrays are indeed objects. That's something that you need to know. Behind the scenes, they are objects, but we're gonna use them really often, so some people think of them as arrays, just array as a separate thing, because we are gonna use arrays and objects really often, both together, side by side, and that's it. That's why we can call them arrays without any trouble. But if you're asked, what is the data type of an array? That's gonna be an object. With that said, how can we retrieve a certain element in an array? Well, we use square bracket syntax. So in here, we can say square brackets and then put 0 in there. If we do that, you can see we get January. So from the whole array where we had this, the whole months, then we took just the 0 indexed element. Arrays are starting from 0, so 0, 1, 2, and 3. That means that the 0 indexed element is indeed January, our first element in this array. We can also replace elements. So if I remove this console log, and let's take, for example, the third month. So that's going to be under the index of 2, 0, 1, 2, that's going to be March. We can say months 2 is equal to, and let's do not March, so we're going to change it. And afterwards, we can console log the array. Let's see how it's going to look right now. You can see we have January, February, not March, April, which means that we successfully changed the third element in this array. We can also add a new element to the array using the square bracket syntax, and we just have to specify the index that doesn't exist yet. For example, 0, 1, 2, 3. So the fourth one is going to be May. If we now do that and then console log the months, you can see now we have 5 months, January, February, March, April, and then May. We can also get the total count of the elements in the array. We do that by saying months.length. Let's remove this fifth one, and then we know that we should indeed get 4. So this is going to be really useful if you want to know the number of elements in the array. And as we mentioned, array can store elements of any type. For example, in here we have the months, but now let's do something different. I'm going to expand this into a new line so we can more easily see it. And then we said we can have something like this, apple, which is a string, right? We can also have an object inside of there, where we have name is equal to John, for example. We can also have a Boolean, true. We can also have a function. And now, if we console log the months, or let's not call it months anymore because these are not months, let's call them values, just like that. And then we're gonna console log the values. As you can see, we have a lot of different data types in our array. That's completely legal. Great. You're often going to find yourself needing to loop through an array to get all the elements one by one. That's where the for loop we've learned comes in handy. I'm gonna do Command or Control Z to get back to what we had, just the 4 months before all of these nonsense. And now I'll try to loop through the months. For that, we're gonna use the for loop. As we said, for, the first thing is we have to set the variable equal to 0. Loop until I is lower than, and then now we have to specify the length of the array. Well, we're not gonna say 4, right? We know it's 4, but let's say that you have many more. You don't wanna count each time. So what we're gonna say is months.length. So this is how you loop over array of any length. You just say while it's less than months.length. Great. Or any array name that length. Great. And then we can say I++. And finally, we can console log. In there, we can say months and then get the element under the index of I. Now we can save this and see what do we get. As you can see, now we get separate console logs, one on each line, which means we successfully loop through the array. Next videos in this section are going to be whole lectures about different built-in array methods for looping. They allow us to loop faster with added functionality and less code. With the looping methods, we're going to explore all the most important array methods, such as array sum, array every, array that includes, sort, map, filter, find, reduce. Basically everything you need to know about arrays is coming right up.